I have the most amazing, beautiful disappearing 9 patch that you've ever seen. And you see how I've got this put together. We know how to make a 9 patch. I have tutorials out there if you're interested. What I want to show you is what we can do with this. And we are going to take a piece of fabric and we are going to double this up. Oh my goodness, what do you think we're going to do? I am going to take a ruler and cut this. Well, first I'm going to sew this, but even before that I need to mark this. So we're going to go corner to corner, and this may take a minute or two, but take your time, get it right in the corner. You want to get right across those seams that have nested and sewn in beautifully. So we've got that corner. Then we're going to go with this corner right here, and we're just going to go from one side to the other. Now, you've done this before with a lot of different projects to make triangles, right? Does this look familiar? Have you ever made triangles with a disappearing 9-patch? Oh my gosh, you are in for a treat. What I'm going to do now is get this set up, and I need to measure this. Now it's 7 inches. So this 9-patch made out of charm squares equals 14 inches. And so my center is going to be 7 inches in the middle. And I'm going to check both sides because I want to make sure I have equal size blocks. And you know, when you measure, you always want to measure in the middle. Don't measure on the outside edges because, let me get that straightened out, because they can shift and they can stretch when you're sewing them. And you can kind of have some problems if you just rely on those outer edges. Go through the middle. Oops, I'm a little off right there, but that's okay. When we trim this up, it's all going to be beautiful. Okay, so come down to my 7 inches right here. And if you're not sure about being square or even, then you've got a line here that you just drew. Line up with that line there. And I have 7 inches on this side, 7 inches on that side, and we'll put another one right through here. So there's a couple cutting lines here, and there's a couple sewing lines. So what I want to show you is what we do next. We're going to pin this because I want to make sure that once I have this all laid out, I have it marked, I want it to be securely held together because I have a couple diagonal seams. So what I'm going to do is just put some pins in, and I put it in the corners because that's pretty much where I expect some of the shifting could occur. And I notice that that's not exactly even, so I'm going to sort of drag that across with my fingers and make sure that everything is right where I want it. And we'll come over here and do the same thing. And then I'm ready to sew. And what I'm going to do initially is one diagonal at a time. So I'm going to come down one side with a 1/4 inch seam and back up the other. And then I'm going to do this one and back again. Once we do that, we're going to start cutting. So you see how fast this is going. Not to mention wonderful. Wait till you see what this looks like. As you can see, I've sewn my diagonals. I have my lines all ready to do cutting. The backing is attached, and now is where the magic begins. Oh my goodness, this is just so much fun. I'm going to cut this way, up and down first, and then back and forth. So up and down, side to side, and then I'll do the diagonals. Because the diagonals, since they're already sewn together, I shouldn't have too much problem with cutting them. Whereas if this shifts, it will make it more difficult. And so I'm going to line it right on the line there. And we'll come this way. Try not to move anything. And what I want to do is keep my ruler right on the drawn line. And just kind of make sure everything's where it needs to be and give it a cut. And we're going to come the other way. I'm going to practically be crawling over this table here in a minute. Let's see, just like this. All right, everything should be cut, and they should all come apart. Now, whoops, I missed a spot. What's important here is separating them. There are two different triangles. This way, see how we have every large triangle cut in half. So we want to put all these that are the same together. And you see how those all have the short points at the top. This one is going to go this way. Now, we could, if we wanted to, put these together like this, but there's such a better way. So I'm just going to set this up here, and actually let me bring a couple of these down that I have already pressed. So what I do is I put this on the ironing board and I just press everything to the background because the background doesn't have any seams. And so that makes it really nice and easy. So I have these nice and pressed and we're ready to put them together. Oh, but I have to show you first. We have to trim these. Oh my gosh, see, I'm so excited. I'm getting ahead of the game. Now, we started with 7-inch squares. We took a diagonal seam, so now they measure 6.5. I'm going to take my 45 line and put it right on that diagonal seam. And I'm going to go as far up to the corner as I can. I'm also going to make sure that my 6.5 marks and here are on the edge of the fabric because I don't want to lose anything. And by coming all the way up as far as I can, then that gives me more room on my second cut. The fudge factor I'm always talking about. I want to have plenty of room to make adjustments if necessary. So I've got my line, and I'm going to now put my 6.5 on each side. So here it's on the side there, right here it's on the bottom. And look, there's hardly anything to trim. These turned out really well. Now, you are going to have some that will have thicker trimmings, and that's kind of just the nature of what it is. And when you cut your triangles and you sew them, you cut them and press them, some of them are just going to be a little bit different, and that happens. And it's just a matter of how everything fit together, and maybe one corner or one side of the whole piece, the 9 patch, didn't exactly line up really well. Okay, so I have a funny one here there we go. Okay, it wasn't going to work for me. Okay, so I have these. I have them trimmed. I have them at 6.5 inches. And I want to show you some here that are pressed. So remember, we have to use all of them in the same direction in the same block. So in order for me to get flying geese, I have to come, let's see, I can go this way or I can go this way. And in doing that, my blocks, look at that, will come, whoops, get it the right way. Here we go. Will come together beautifully. Now, I don't want that to kind of go in the same place, so I'm going to turn this that way. So see my points? So keep an eye on those little points. That'll give you direction as to where you want to go. There, I like that better. Look at that. Look at these flying geese. Are these fabulous or what? Oh my gosh, I just love them so, so much. Now, let me show you. I have a couple already put together. Look at that. Now, I'm pressing everything except this center seam because as I sew these together, that's probably going to be the matching seam. What I do want to show you here is the big thing when you're putting this all together. The first thing you do is sew these two together and then these two together. So we'll put this over like this. Then we're going to line up the corners and make sure everything is nice and square. and I'm going to sew this way. And I will lift my piece up and I'll look in there and make sure that my seams are aligned right where I want them to be. Now, there are going to be places where you're not going to be nesting your seam as normal. If it's easier for you, you can go ahead and press these open, and then that way it'll reduce some of the bulk. And just kind of finger press that open and do it this way. And then just roll this back and line it up, put a pin in, and then you're good to go. And then you're going to sew this way. And that's it. So I'm going to pull some more of these together, and I want to show you how I do some of this sewing, because I want to show you how these corners go together and how I do it. But I think you're going to love this. Oh my gosh, this is just a fabulous pattern. I love it. After sewing and cutting and sewing again and cutting again, we have these wonderful disappearing 9-patch half square triangles. They're nice and scrappy. They have some great color. And we're going to put these together into flying geese. So exciting. I love this. I do want to show you a mistake I made that I want to show you how to rectify. And sometimes when you're pressing and you're pressing open your seam, you know how you don't quite get the seam all the way over? And when you stretch it out at the corner, you get this kind of open mark up here. Well, when we sew this to our corner, we need to make sure we open that all the way in order for our seams to line up properly. So let me show you what we're going to do here. All right, I have the 2 blocks lined up here and here, and you can see where the seam is not all the way into the corner. So that's also a telltale mark or indication that you're off a bit. So I want to just open this and finger press it, and then I'm going to put it right in line with that corner. Are we getting a good focus there? I want you to be able to see this. And when we do that, it's going to have to come over a little bit, and I'm just going to pin this right in place. And I can tell I'm right where I want to be because those are in alignment nicely. So I'm going to pin this across this way, and that'll hold everything in place. So the problem is my seam allowance will be a little bit off on the back. So I need to make sure that I align my seam with the backing fabric. And you see how it's in just a little bit there. I know this is fussy, but I want my points to really come out nice and sharp. And so this is going to be the best way to do it. So I'm going to line this part, this green background or backing fabric, I guess it is background, isn't it? To the side of my presser foot, so I know it's at my 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to sew down this far. And then once I'm to this point, I can just line the bottom up and sew straight down. And I just want to make sure that this lines up, because sometimes this seam can tend to want to pull over a little. And you'll have a seam on the back, but it's facing the way we're traveling, the way we're sewing, and we don't have to worry about it flipping over on us. Now this one looks much better. So see how these points come right into the corner? That's how you want them to look. And when you put these together, and unfortunately for this point, I mentioned it earlier, for them to match up this way, I pressed everything to the background, and so that means these seams are going to be going in the same direction, which it can be a bit hard to, to nest them. There'll be a lot to sew, but it works for me. I can make that work. If it's easier for you, press these seams open and then sew them together. And you may find that's a bit simpler to do it that way. So I've got my stitching in. I'm going to come down and just finish off the rest. And when we look at it, we have a beautiful Flying Geese block. Look at that. And the one on top right here. And now what we're going to do is sew these together right here. Now you'll notice that I definitely have my 1/4" seam here. And the beauty is we're sewing to a straight seam. There's no points here. The only point we have to match is where these two come together on the two blocks. When we're putting the Flying Geese together, the Flying Geese blocks need to have a point. But when you're sewing the two blocks together, it's not so much about a point as it is just aligning the seams. I'm going to cut that chain stitching. Now, I want to sew it on the side of the point, so I'm going to flip this over because I want to see where this seam crosses, because my seam allowance, my needle needs to go on the seam allowance side of that point. So I'm going to align these up, make sure that they're nesting, and as you're checking on the nesting, what you also want to look at is this point from this block in front. You want to make sure that point is right in line with the back seam and that it aligns with the top of the fabric edge where the seam allowance is going to be. And then just put a quick seam in there. Now, you can, let me just do this real quick. You can also do your nesting with this flip the other way. Let's see, but see, we don't get to see. Yeah, we do. Okay, good. All right, you can tell I haven't done this a lot yet. I'm still having fun and learning different ways to put this together. Okay, and here's something new. Okay, this is even better. So by putting our seam going this way, so we're nesting, that means I'm going to sew to here, and it's going to kind of nudge that seam into the other one so it'll nest extra well. And we want to make sure that this point aligns with this point. That way we'll get our seam allowance just where we want it when we go to join our blocks. All right, I'm going to just sew straight through here. I want to make sure that that one underneath doesn't flip around on me. And as I'm coming here, I'm going to take a look at, just make note where this crossover is right here. And then, oh, actually, it's right there. I'm pointing to the pin instead of the stitching. So it's right here. And I want to make sure that I come just to the top of that. And I think we made it. So now I'm going to come to the bottom and align this here and sew straight through. And I do find this seam is worth keeping an eye on. It either tends to want to flip down when I'm sewing, or sometimes it wants to pull out. So just make sure it stays straight right where you want it to be. All right, and now we have our Flying Geese, and they're attached and they look beautiful. Look at this. So here's the first one, and it doesn't really look like it's matching from afar because there's that green and then the white, and it just looks a little funny, but it is. It's right where it needs to be. And then this one, how did we do on this one? Oh, yeah. And again, I like to keep just a little bit of the background fabric there because I think it makes it easier to press. Otherwise, you get all that fabric bunched up at the seam. So this is it. So now we're going to attach all the Flying Geese into pairs, and we can decide how we want to set this up, what kind of a pattern. I'm going to come up with a couple ideas and show you, but we are just about there. All we have to do now, press these, and when I press them, I come in and I make sure I press these seams to the sides, and then I where's my seam? There it is. Then I press this seam to set it, but I don't press it open or closed or to one side or another, because it'll depend on how my blocks go together, which way I need to sew these. So I'm going to leave that to the end. So that's it. Okay, now you know how to sew it. and we're ready to move on. We're going to put this quilt together. This is my first layout, just to try some different ideas to see how this is going to go together. Here's a super simple one to put together because those seams will be very easy. Okay, I think I like this one the best. I just need to add the second half of that row on the right-hand side to get the diamonds to be the same as the opposite side. So, I'm going to go ahead and I have a couple already sewn together. I just need to cut and press, and I'm going to put this quilt together. I had a lot of fun with this layout, and I love how it turned out. I'm so glad you're here today, and I hope you're as excited about this quilt as I am. Thanks so much for being here and watching. It's always a pleasure to share my quilts with you. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I hope you get lots of holiday quilting finished soon.